last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. In Connecticut, the feds are saying that due to the state's reforms to their child welfare system and less kids being snatched into care, they're missing out on about $49 million a year in federal reimbursement money. In Texas this week, some state workers are making more in overtime than they are from their regular salaries. This is partially due to the fact that some of the state's CPS agents are juggling more than 40 cases a month, and partially due to the fact that their caseloads jump after the first day of school when teachers who don't previously know the kids or families start ratting parents out to the CPS in droves, and the fact that they have kids sleeping in a local CPS office due to the lack of foster homes. In Virginia Beach, Virginia, city officials are considering having the police take over child abuse investigations and only handing the kids over to CPS agents when the allegations are substantiated. In Arkansas, a mandated reporter class is held for teachers who are required to rat parents out to the child protective industry or face a year in jail even if they're on vacation in another part of the state. In Florida, the child protective industry is frequently neglecting the dental needs of foster kids. And in Arizona, the Pima County child protective industry is beating out state and national averages by snatching so many kids that they can't possibly house them all. In Pennsylvania, federal officials have launched an investigation to see if Jerry Sandusky was part of a much larger pedophile ring and to see if he was sharing boys from his Second Mile charity with other rich and powerful men. And Penn State University decides to hold a sexual abuse conference with Sugar Ray Leonard and Elizabeth Smart scheduled to speak. In West Virginia, the CEO of the state's chapter of National Association of Social Workers is concerned about the safety of CPS agents who go around destroying families. And in Oklahoma, a recent filing by the Child Advocacy Group in a federal class action against the state's foster care system is called inflammatory and false by CPS lawyers. A new report from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights has made public that 70% of students who are subjected to dangerous and abusive physical restraints and seclusion in school are students with disabilities. In Wisconsin, a couple has lost their quest to adopt a boy from a Vietnamese orphanage after the real mother showed up and took him home. The state of Indiana is taking forever to reform their child welfare system. And the child protective industry in Florida manages to pawn off more than 3,000 of your kids last year to adoptive parents. In Ireland this week, a father goes to court to try to prevent his son from being put into foster care. India creates a task force to look at the problems in children's homes that they've been looking at for the last several months. The government of Armenia wants to end the use of orphanages in that country. And in Kenya, the court orders a children's home to free 3 girls back to their parents. In Nigeria, parents won't adopt orphan kids because it violates their religious beliefs and is not culturally acceptable. And in Scotland, a social worker is struck off for misconduct after kissing a co-worker at a children's home while she slept. In Australia, the government starts giving counseling and support services for kids who grew up in foster care. In Queensland, Australia, CPS agents are left operating without guidelines for what constitutes abuse or neglect. And an inquiry into the child protective industry hears that Queensland CPS agents are pissing so many people off that their staff is regularly assaulted by parents and subject to death threats. In Canada, an Onion Lake mother is demanding a public inquiry and the closure of Onion Lake Family Services after her 13-month-old child was killed in foster care. In British Columbia, First Nations child welfare groups are taking actions to address issues related to children in care. In Ontario, a task force is created to investigate criminal activity, breach of trust, and obstruction of justice perpetuated against victims of the child protective industry. A former foster parent from Prince Edward Island gets 9 years for sexually assaulting 2 teenage girls in his care. And in Ontario, a teenager is arrested for pointing a toy gun at a Children's Aid Society security guard. In England this week, social workers took a newborn baby girl into care within hours of her birth after the mother, who is still dosed up on morphine following a difficult labor and life-saving surgery, granted consent. British social workers took a week to tell a mother that her son had died after being in care in order to receive treatment for a rare degenerative neurological condition. A British mother goes on the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, wins all kinds of money, and uses it to find her son who was adopted out 45 years ago. British social workers failed to tell an adoptive couple about the kids being abused in their past childhood before it was finally blamed for her uncontrollable behavior. And the British child protective industry literally goes on the witch hunt as they pledge to tackle the abuse of children in the UK who are accused of witchcraft. In entertainment news this week, Usher and his ex returned to court for their bitter child custody hearing, and Teen Mom star Janelle Evans says that her baby's daddy owes her thousands of dollars in back child support. In Florida, a CPS agent is charged with molesting 2 5-year-old girls. In Pennsylvania, a peeping Tom constable is charged with spying on his teenage foster daughters in the shower of his camper. In Wisconsin, a foster parent accepts a plea deal for probation after after molesting 4 boys in his care. And in New Hampshire, the wife of a man who was accused of molesting a 15-year-old girl and a 14-year-old foster kid for 4 years is arrested for helping him to cover up his crimes. In Vermont, a Mennonite minister is found guilty of helping a woman with parental kidnapping in the custody battle between a mother who turned to God and her former lesbian lover. In Oklahoma, a teenager is arrested on the grounds of the Oklahoma governor's office after assaulting and running away from a CPS agent. In California, a foster father pleads not guilty to killing a kid in his care, and a preliminary hearing for a foster mother who killed her 1-month-old foster child was postponed. A Florida mother is arrested for threatening to blow up a child care center after claiming that she wasn't being listened to. In Texas, an Austin-based Lutheran child welfare agency loses its bid to privatize the state's foster care system due to a history of problems at a few of its operations. In Pennsylvania, a judge rules that CPS agents ignored a mother's claims that her kid was being abused in foster care, as well as her efforts to get them back. And finally, tonight, a Pennsylvania lunch lady is fined $600 for feeding lunch to needy kids in the neighborhood. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.